All right, it's time to talk about 2023 pay period number 6. That's the week ended February 4th. Let's talk about it. Coming up. I started this week out in a hotel, which is where I ended last week, because my DPF filter had to be baked. I didn't know these things had to be baked, but apparently a DPF filter has to be baked at some real high temperature, and that's not a good thing. It took them a little while to get this done and get my truck ready for me to be back on the road again. Now, I'm only able to run on paper logbooks for 8 days. After the 8th day, I have to be back in a truck with an ELD. Fortunately, at the very end of the 8th day, they managed to get my truck finished. Well, here I am, ready to go, but something is missing. Got the trailer, it's loaded, it's ready to go. Tractor is still in the shop. Hopefully they get it finished up here in the next few minutes, next hour or so. It's been in the shop for 8 days. I'm ready to have it back. All right, this is the smallest truck rest area that I've ever seen. 2 spaces, 2, count them. I crossed the desert on a horse with no name on Interstate 40. Got to see a lot of people boondocking. That's where they take their campers and their RVs and they just park on the sides of the desert out here. It's pretty cool. I got to see a lot of neat things as I crossed the desert. This is the return trip. I've been out for a couple of weeks and I'm ready to get my butt back home. So I was traveling hard. Got to get back to Indiana, which is where I'm going to be delivering this load. Along my journey, I found myself in a familiar place, Stratford, Missouri. This is where a company that I worked for previously is headquartered. So I've been in these truck stops before, and that's how I knew they'd have room. As I'm traveling through Portland, Indiana, I've got time on my clock so I don't have to stop at the Walmart. I've got enough time that I'll be able to make Fort Recovery. I like these small towns. This is a bigger small town. They actually have a Walmart. Town I live in, we don't have a Walmart. Our county doesn't have a Walmart. But I like these old towns as you get to see the historic buildings. Now, you do have to give yourself a little extra room making those turns because they're a little on the tight side. At Fort Recovery, if there's an open garage door, you're supposed to try and put your truck in there. Every once in a while, you find an easy one of these nice ones right here at the front with lots of space to turn around. Sometimes you got to do the challenging ones. This particular time, I got out, opened the doors, put myself in yard move, and I got down there and realized that the spot that I was going to have to take is that next to last one. It's all right. I've done it a few times. I'm getting better at it, and I like that one. Now, they don't teach the 180-degree backing maneuver in school, so this is one of those ones you got to figure out by trial and error, and after you've done it a few times, it gets easier. Fighting the clock to get home and you're almost there, that's when you're going to encounter things like car fire. That sign said there was a car fire up ahead. Sure enough, traffic came to a bottleneck and shut down. We call that an adverse condition. We don't like adverse conditions, but the ELD has a way to handle adverse conditions. The hours of service will give you 2 additional hours when you hit something that is an unusual traffic condition. It can't be normal Atlanta traffic, but a car being on fire, shutting down all lanes of traffic, that would count as an adverse condition. You could also have an adverse condition such as an unpredicted windstorm or maybe snow hitting Atlanta that wasn't predicted. We don't get snow in Atlanta, so we get snow in Atlanta, it's going to shut everything down because people can't drive. But in this case, it was a car fire shutting down Interstate 20. That poor motorcycle guy, he decided to get off the bike because he'd been stuck in traffic for a while. They don't allow lane splitting here in Georgia, so they just can't zip their way through traffic or they'll find themselves getting a ticket, and that's never good. One thing all that traffic did is my rest clock was running out. I didn't have quite enough to make it home, and since there's construction on the way home, I had to take a 30-minute break just about 20 minutes from the house. Absolutely hate when that happens. You're so close to home, but you got to take that 30. just to be able to comply with the hours of service. It's the rules. We got to follow them. But it was time to be back home again. I was ready to be back home. I'm going to be home for the weekend. Enjoy it, and I'll be heading back out. All right, taking a look at the logs, we had 2,453 dispatched miles, 2,510 logged miles, 2,507 odometer miles. It's time to look at my unedited pay statement for the week ending February the 4th, which is the 6th period of 2023. Run number 1 went from Phoenix, Arizona to Fort Recovery, Ohio, with a stop in Greencastle, Indiana. It paid $1,385 for 1,819 miles. That's 76.1 cents per mile. I went home loaded, so the next run is from Fort Recovery Terminal to my home in Shadydale, Georgia. $403 for 634 miles. That's 63.5 cents per mile. This week's summary box is really pretty easy. There's $200 in layover pay. That was my breakdown pay. Plus $1,574 in loaded miles, $14 in stop pay. That's a total gross pay of $1,788 for 2,453 miles, or 72.9 cents per mile. Time to look at the calendar page. The month of January had 31 days. I worked 21 of those days. I was home for 5 days, and I was off away from home 5 days. The month of February so far has 4 days. I worked 3 of those days, and I was home for 1. I got 2146 the first week of the year, 2396 for the second, 2292 for the third, 1346 for the fourth, 2501 for the fifth, and 1788 for the sixth pay period. The year-to-date page. We've got 6 pay periods so far this year. My gross income is $12,472. My total miles, 15,653. That breaks down to an average gross income of $2,078 per week, average miles of 2,608. We multiply that by 52, we get the 108,000 estimation for the year, 135,000 miles, or 79.7 cents per mile. It's time for Tom's final thoughts. This is where I give you some final thoughts about, well, whatever I want to talk about. In this particular case, I'm going to talk about specializing. TC Boggs has got a channel, and he's over at Keenan, KAG, and he said something that's dead on. He said, you need to specialize. If you are just ordinary or basic, as the word he used, you could see some struggles in the future. That doesn't mean everybody who just pulls a dry van or a reefer rig is going to be in trouble. What that means is the more specialized you are, the more in demand you're going to be. Do you have your tanker? Do you have your hazmat? Do you have your TWIC card? Have you got your doubles and triples? If you're in certain states, you can get these endorsements without having to pay anything if you're a veteran. If you are, even if you have to pay, it's a small amount. It's worth it to get these additional certifications put on your license. Because once you have them, it's knowledge they're not going to take back, and you become more valuable. Can you drive LTL loads? LTL loads are a little different than the other breeds. You got to figure out your stops, plan your days, and make sure that you're able to get to those places when they're open. It doesn't do you any good to haul butt, get there, and find the place closed until morning. Just my final thought, talking about how you need to specialize, you need to learn as much as you can about the industry. Learn everything you can and be a professional truck driver. The driving of the truck is the easy part. Anyone can do it. We listen to audiobooks, we listen to music, we talk to our friends on headset as we drive down the road. The hard part is the planning ahead of time. Making sure that you've got your week planned out, your day planned out, your next run planned out, your fuel stop planned out, where you're going to stop for the night, the backup plan for where you're going to stop for the night. You won't find me sleeping on an exit ramp. Why? Planning. I plan and I overplan everything I do. And until next time, make sure you're enjoying every day of work.